Before we get started with today's video, I want to let you know that we're actually doing the 31 days of J-tober. What does that mean? That means you get all J, all day, every day. No one needs that much J, but hey, yay.
This video is sponsored by Micro Center and their custom PC builder. Use a custom PC builder to plan your next build, and when parts are added to your cart and in-store pickup is selected, you have the option for Micro Center technician to fully build your PC for an extra fee. And if the order is placed at least 4 hours before closing, you can enjoy your new PC the very same day. Get the best prices and parts selection at any of Micro Center's 25 locations across the United States. And right now, new customers can get a free 240 gigabyte SSD while supplies last, in-store only, and limit 1 per email. To see everything that Micro Center has to offer and to learn more about this limited time SSD giveaway, click the link in the description below.
Corsair makes a gaming monitor now. You guys have probably already heard about this yesterday. This launched on the 30th of September. This is the XENEON. You know, it's obvious why they couldn't call it Xenon, right? Or even Xeon. I mean, Xenon's a type of, energy or whatever, and Xeon is a type of CPU. So they're like, just take both and just kind of make a name, and XENEON popped out.
It's like neon.
It's not neon, it's not called cathode. So gaming panels, man, I'll tell you, it's gonna take a lot, I think, to get people on board with another manufacturer of panels. But let me tell you, what we have here from Corsair is something that ties into an ecosystem that currently exists between Corsair and Elgato, because they are the same owner now. Corsair owns Elgato. So that means that you can, and I'm trying to do this without breaking the foam, that means that you can build a panel that ties in with your entire setup seamlessly. And that's what it's gonna make things kind of different here for this particular panel. It's gonna tie in with your Flex Arm mounts, it's gonna tie in with your IQ software. In fact, if you don't wanna even sit there and deal with the little joystick button to deal with all your settings on your panel, you can just tie it into IQ. And guess what? If you want to switch between different types of modes of lighting or have the features turn on and off in the panel, you can do that through the Elgato Stream Deck. There's also an attachment that we can attach to our setup that adds a touch panel display where you can do, we're gonna show all that today. So this is the base. It's got this nice, real, just sort of a clean, matte black metal, not plastic, beefy as all hell. Built-in cable management on the back. So you have these tracks that slide up and down, so you can run cables through here, through the middle part if you want, or just sort of click them into the sides right there. So if you're running your USB cables, your cameras, any particular like backlighting, key light, whatever, it'll all work seamlessly with the mount. Of course, it is VESA 100 by 100. So if you want to run an articulating arm or something, you can. The base, super futuristic looking. In pictures, I was a little unsure about whether or not I would like the base because it's so different and out there. But if you're not running an arm, look at that. Yeah, did you hear the beefiness of this? Does this look like a weapon?
It's like a batleth.
I will fight for my honor.
So the panel, besides the mount here, which obviously we still have to put together, which is toolless also. It's got the little twisty thumb thingy on there that you can use if you want, or you can just use a screwdriver, but we'll go ahead and mount this real quick. The amount of rubber feet there are on the bottom of this, look at the rubber pads on the bottom of that. Feet here, feet, rubber pads that are not, means this thing is not gonna go sliding on the table. There's your friction. I'm 265 pounds, fellas. So, if you want to know if it's going to slide, there you go. So there's your mount. 32 inch. 27 inches, that's old school. Nobody cares about 27 inches anymore. 32 inches or go home, bro. 1 millisecond, gray to gray. IPS, 165 hertz. Quantum dot LED gaming panel. Let's talk about what else comes with it. It's not screwed down, so I need to keep that in mind because you do still use the VESA mount screws to mount it to the base. If we look at the backside right here, you can see you have swivel and you have tilt. It's just because it's not screwed down right now, it's not gonna tilt, but you do have tilt and swivel and height adjust. What comes with it? More cable management. There's the screws right there. More cable management so we can You know, we talk about it in our setup reviews, like cable management, cable management, cable management. You'd be surprised how much nicer you can make a setup look by just managing, geez, those feet, your cables. You can add more of these and you have cable management on the back. Remember I talked about mounting your cameras and stuff for your setups? Geez, why is that so thick? Why is that so thick? That's what she said. Phil was like, yeah. This mounts right here. In fact, let me demonstrate that now, because the idea behind this panel is streaming. You can mount that there, and now you have a place to mount this guy. This is the Elgato Face Cam. So again, another one of Corsair's products. That, by the way, if you haven't seen the quality of the Face Cam, I ditched this guy for it. This is the Logitech Studio Cam. Absolute garbage in terms of its actual sensor and how good it is. It's terrible. This camera actually gives you f-stop and ISO control. Yeah, f-stop and ISO on a webcam. Oh, and there's another function of this camera that I absolutely love. Are you ready for this? Removable USB-C cable. You can remove the cable, which makes it freaking awesome, but because we still have that quarter 20, is it quarter 20? Yeah, I think it's quarter 20. We can mount right here. Now I know what you're thinking already right now. You're like, wait a minute, Jay, that's not a very good streamer angle, right? The back of the monitor, and you're not gonna run it like that. I mean, technically you could, but because it's a nice wide angle lens, this is still gonna be in view. So this is the Elgato Flex Arm S. So here we go, we get the monitor height set where we want. We can adjust the arm to where we want it. Get it out in front of your monitor, like so. Check that out. Pretty cool, right? I mean, that's, I really wish my monitor at home had this because I like doing my live streaming now. And you know, there's a downside to this though. If you use a wall-mounted VESA mount, you lose this mount system. So it only works if you're using the Elgato arm on the Corsair base, but look at that. And then because of the wire management on the back, you can run the cable down here, like use Velcro or something, a little Velcro tie or something, and have the cable come right down the back. And then there it is. You're not stuck having to use these little rubber friction mount thingies, you know, not having to go like this, which to me, that's always just seemed cheap. And it wobbles. That's sturdy. All right, so now that I have mounted down the stand, it's not wobbling all over the place, you can see the amount of adjustable height that you have. If you take a look at the tilt, it only tilts down a couple of degrees. So if you're going max height, depending on your seating position height, you may not be looking straight at it. It swivels up, ironically, quite a bit, which I feel like I would have rather had that much tilt down, minimal tilt up, but I think that's besides the point here. I do like the fact that it has a swivel because you're not gonna slide the stand very easily. I'm falling in love with the setup the more I look at it. Okay, the other things that come in the box, your power brick. It is an external power brick, not giant, but you're gonna have to account for this when it comes to your cable management. But we get 3 cables besides the power cable. We get a DisplayPort 1.4 cable because DisplayPort 1.4 is the standard these days. So we get our cable. It's 1.6 meters, so it's not super long. In fact, I'll stretch it out so you can see. You might end up wanting to get your own cable if you're trying to do a super clean wire managed run, you know, under your desk and maybe through some cable management stuff. It's not super long. So yeah, 1.3 meters, you can see right there. Not very long. You're not gonna have a lot of room to get to your system. I recommend tossing this in a drawer and getting a nice long cable that's 1.4. You get the HDMI cable as well. So same length, but we get a USB-C cable, and there's multiple reasons for that. You can actually use the USB-C as a DisplayPort cable. You can use USB-C video, which also is a 1.4 standard. However, this is also your communication with the monitor for using the features like I mentioned with iCUE so that you can make monitor adjustments. And this is a lot easier to run than say the thick USB 3.0, you know, standard plug. I forgot what it's called, USB-C-A type plug, I guess it is, that plugs in. Super thick. This guy right here, check this out. The one thing this panel doesn't do is go landscape or portrait, which is easy for connecting things in and then putting it back. But check this out. See, you just run it like that, or, right? Look at that. Cable management, bruv. So you get an idea right there of the fact that you're not gonna see your cables from the other side. Like from this side, you cannot see the cable whatsoever, just what's sticking out in the bottom down here. So when it comes to colors though, it's 98% DCI P3. So it's really good on, and that's because of the IPS panel, obviously, the fact that it's IPS. 100% sRGB, 100% ARGB, or Adobe RGB. So it's also not just a good gaming panel and streaming panel, it's also a good content creation panel where you get accurate colors, allowing you to do color correction on photography and videography without then getting it on someone else's panel and going, what the heck did you edit this on, a potato? Because I've been there in the beginning, I used to edit on a TN panel. So one of the things that Corsair is really kind of aiming at with this monitor is making it really more of a control center. And because of the fact that Corsair has such a huge ecosystem now between Elgato and obviously their own Corsair products, I got a little bit of a demonstration here for you. So what we've added to the keyboard, this is the iQ Nexus. This is essentially a touch panel that you can add to any existing Corsair keyboard, or if you don't have a Corsair keyboard and you still want to use this, it's got this docking station that you can plug it in. You can see it's got a little USB port right there that it plugs into, and then this can plug into either your monitor or your desktop. These are the brackets right here that fit the various different keyboards, and they're designed specifically for the offset spacing for the keyboards that have a USB port built into the keyboard. So these are for like K95s, K70s, K65s, and these other monitors. So you can see I've got my K70 here, or is this K95? I think it's actually K95, I can't remember. Anyway, it's got two-sided tape that it sticks with to the backside of the motherboard, and then you just line it up so that it overlays with the USB port. But the cool thing about this is if you look, it's got a short USB cable that's designed to fit, and plug right into the USB. So we've got the double-sided sticky tape stuck on there, the brackets on there. So now our Nexus is kind of turned into a little control center here that you can set up different widgets and stuff on. So as you can see right here, I've got the graphics card set up and I made the color green. That way you can I can just at a glance be like, oh, that's the graphics card because NVIDIA, or red if it were AMD. Core temp, CPU temp right here also. So you can set that up however you want, whether it be power limit, temperature, CPU usage, or temp. I have it set to temp. So let's take a look at the way the software works. And I do have Heaven running right now in the background, just because I was taking a look at the way the colors are. One of my first thoughts with this particular panel is that it pops. It's very punchy. And typically you would get that type of saturation, vibrant / punchiness with like a TN panel or a VA panel because of the fact that they were all about brightness and just the saturation levels, but they weren't accurate. But the nice thing about having 98% DCI P3 means that we're getting the accuracy of IPS, but we're getting the richness and the fullness with almost like TN, but accurate. So now you don't have to deal with it looking all washed out like IPS tends to look, because it looks more lifelike. You get the punchiness if you want it. And of course you can go in there and adjust the saturation settings if it's a little too much for you. So I was kind of seeing how the 165 Hertz looks on here. It's as smooth as you expect 165 Hertz with a 1 millisecond response time, great to look. So let's go ahead and open up iQ and let's see the way it all integrates. So our monitor, because we're plugged in with USB-C, means that we do have a data connection between the monitor and iQ. Now, one of the reasons why they sent this with this panel is because you can turn this into a place where you can quickly switch between presets, either on color settings, or the various preset modes that are in the monitor itself. You could use a little joystick back here to do that if you want. See, we can bring up all our OSD settings, our brightness, our contrast, our sharpness, color temp, and all that sort of stuff. If we go over here to so let's make a button right here, right? If we click that button, we can change the widgets or whatever. Let's talk specifically with the monitor setup. If you make it a button, and you make it an assignment to something to do specifically with the panel, assignment, new assignment, or right here, the add Xeneon button, you get picture mode, color temp, gamma, eye saver, refresh overlay, MPRT, and response time. You don't get contrast control. You don't get brightness control. You get gamma, which no one should ever touch once it's set properly. You get color temp, which once again, no one should ever touch once it's set properly. Refresh overlay. We thought, okay, that's neat. Maybe what we'll do is we'll set this button, which is the one that says button name right there, to refresh overlay. Check that out. That's gonna show us our Hertz rating, right? So it's off, and we'll always see our Hertz rating down there. Well, here's what happens when you push it. One, it's extremely laggy. Watch this. Push. And it disappeared. Like, it just disappeared from there. Wait, why'd the whole thing scoot over? Look, that's not the way it looks there. So, that's odd. There, okay, let's try that again. Touch. All it does is turn that on in the corner. And you saw the delay on that? That's insane. It doesn't display the hertz rating here like I feel it should. It displays it on the screen, which is kind of dumb in my opinion. But look at the delay on that. I'm gonna turn it off now, watch. And touch. So it's quick to turn off, watch, turning it on. On. 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds to do something. That's bad. So the Nexus display it's a cool concept that I think will mature. I think it'll get better. The problem is it's all software, so it's got that lag. It's neat if you want to have a sensor panel kind of deal, like we showed how to take a Raspberry Pi screen and turn it into a sensor panel. The only downside is this requires IQ. The button setup is limited. For instance, if you want to see what you can do here with the NVIDIA widget, I'll just do a new one to show you. So I can say GeForce. All you get is power or core. That's all you get. You don't get fan speed, you don't get to see memory usage, none of that stuff. And I feel like that stuff can be expanded, but because it's so new, it just doesn't have full-on support yet. It is neat for things like shortcuts, right? So look, I made a little poop emoji with a J2Sense, text there, and when I push that, it just takes you to the crappiest YouTube channel on all of YouTube. So I mean, you can have shortcuts and stuff that are kind of neat. You could have it launch any app, any executable. So if you were to even make an executable that runs a script, you could probably do more writing a script yourself to have it launch the script, but it just becomes a toggle button at that point, which you could also do with a keyboard shortcut. So, I mean, in fact, they do have scripts installed on this from default. When you first plug it in, it's got a little button that's like showing a little down arrow. When you hit it, it immediately opens up the command prompt, runs a script, goes to the website to download IQ, which is how you control it. So there is that, which is kind of neat. You could do that yourself. You don't need this to do it. But you could do the same thing with the Stream Deck. In fact, they sent me one to sort of demonstrate. I feel it's a little redundant to do all this stuff with the Stream Deck. I would personally prefer the Stream Deck over this when it comes to controlling my panel and all that sort of stuff, because it does have a Xeneon plugin. So you can control the stuff that you can see here with the Elgato Stream Deck. So you can get the mini, you can get the standard or the XL and have all sorts of buttons. It's also an LCD backlit, so you can have your buttons and stuff be glowing and have all this sort of stuff also showing on that. But enough about the integration part. It's just disappointing that it doesn't include any of that turn off overlay. That it doesn't include any of the functionality that we think is most important, which would be like contrast and brightness, especially when we're turning brightness down all the time when we shoot videos and stuff, and now it doesn't want to turn off when I push it. I don't know, we have 2 buttons on there for it. There it goes. I don't know if those were interfering, but either way. I mean, you can adjust your response time, fast, fastest, and normal. I mean, okay, overdrive settings, yeah. You can start to have it, do the predictive overdrive, but the problem with that is you can actually add ghosting or trailing. You can add, I forget what it's called, but when the ghosting's in front of the image because it's overdriving. And so I usually don't mess with any of that stuff anyway. But in terms of the pixel density, 1440 at 32 inches, if you get close to it, pixels appear. 32 inch, at my point, is the absolute cutoff for 1440p or QHD, because of the fact that it's just like when you have a 27 inch 1080p, the pixels start to look big. You add 5 inches of vertical or diagonal viewing angle or viewing size, and then 1440p, the pixels start to look big. Now, at the typical viewing distance, it's fine. It's fine, but if you're sitting closer to it, then it does start to really sort of feel like a 1080 at that point. I'm glad, to be honest with you, that they went with 1440p though than 4K, although 32 inch at 4K looks phenomenal. Just the amount of horsepower you need to drive a 4K panel is the downside. The amount of FPS hit that you take, unless you're running like a 3080, 3080 Ti or 3090, you're gonna have a hard time hitting a consistent 60 FPS in new titles. Like let's just say Battlefield 2042 when it comes out, you're not getting 60 FPS, 4K with like a 3060 Ti or 3070. It's just not gonna happen. A 2080 Ti, I seriously doubt you're gonna get 4K 60 on high to ultra settings. Not gonna happen. I'm a settings snob. I want 60 at least with the ultra settings. And I'm just, for price and all that sort of stuff, I'm glad they didn't go with a 4K. But when it comes to ghosting and stuff, let's go to our favorite UFO website and let's see if we get any terrible ghosting with this. So this is the testufo.com. You can do this on any of your monitors. You can compare if you like. It's 165 hertz panel, so half rate is obviously 83 and then 41. It's an odd number, so you don't get a perfect half rate, which means if I were gonna be using this daily, I would probably honestly set this to like a 120. That way you get a 60 FPS half rate. If you're trying to do things like live streaming or whatever, you're not going to get that odd frame interval, so that your keyframes are always going to be at a perfect ratio. And having 165 is nice when you start to deal with things like FreeSync and G-Sync and such. It's the odd number is, well, odd, and I would prefer to either go with factors of 60. So 30, 60, and 120 would be the absolute setting where I would set it. But if we take a look here at the ghosting, so when I'm on normal, when I go to fast, they sharpen up a little bit. When I go to fastest, they sharpen up a whole bunch. And a lot of times that over sharpening can give you some effects that you really don't like, but I would probably personally leave this on fast. I mean, in terms of performance though, it's not performing any worse than any 1440p high refresh rate panel that I've tested in the past. So I still think fast has the best mix of both anti-ghosting and sharpening and not looking terrible. So other things that this panel does have, HDR. Now this is gonna turn on and off automatically depending on what your settings are. So Windows does have SDR, HDR dynamic switching, and it does have an HDR desktop mode with the slider now, so you can actually make it match the brightness of other HDR things, because typically if you turn on HDR, the desktop goes super dim. So you can at least brighten that back up now, so you don't have this weird effect of going into an HDR title or app and coming out of it and everything looks super dim. So that's automatic. It does have automatic input sensing. So if you have multiple devices in here, let's say you turn off your PC, but you have a PlayStation 5 plugged into this, or an Xbox Series X, or a Switch or whatever with the HDMI. If it's off and you turn on another device, then it'll automatically turn on whatever sends the signal first. It does have pass-through audio. It's pass-through, there's no speakers built into this, so it does have a jack on the back and it can transfer audio through the display port, the HDMI, or the USB-C. So you can have speakers plugged in directly to the back or headphones. It's, again, just a pass-through. You do have volume control on the monitor itself. Input sources, you can see we got Type-C, DisplayPort, HDMI 1 and 2, which I already showed. AMD FreeSync Premium. That's gonna turn on and off by default also. The thing with the AMD FreeSync is this panel, as of right now, as far as I can tell, does not have official G-Sync compatibility labeled as such. If I go into the control panel here for NVIDIA, it does have G-Sync compatibility. I'm gonna turn it on real quick. It just means that NVIDIA has not personally validated this panel yet. I don't know if they have applied for validation or if they just haven't gotten the validation back in time for the launch date of this. But G-Sync is something that shows up in the control panel. I believe NVIDIA, if FreeSync is existing on the panel, NVIDIA automatically puts that option there. You can turn it on. If it gets all buggy and wonky and flickering or turning on or doing weird stuff, artifacts, turn it off, it'll probably go away. So validation, not there yet. I don't know if it's coming. I guess Corsair can speak to that. But I just want to show that it is a FreeSync premium panel. G-Sync does turn on. I haven't had any long-term testing with that yet. Now, is the panel worth it? I feel like this panel has some features that I wish more panels did. Like for instance, this arm mount with a 1/4-20 thread for the camera is awesome. That's speaking as someone right now that has a 38-inch curved panel at home using this exact camera with that little adapter I showed you that it's constantly not wanting to stay on the monitor, because although Elgato made an amazing camera, their clamp sucks really badly. And I would love to have something like this. I'd have to give up my ultra wide for that, and I'm an ultra wide snob now. The 32-inch size, like I said before, that's as big as I would go at 1440p. It probably should be 4K at this size, but in terms of price, 4K would be extremely expensive. It's already an expensive panel at $800 US. With that though, you get a panel that allows you to hook up multiple input devices to it. So it could even work as a TV if you wanted. If you have a soundbar or something, it could also, if you have limited space on your desk, and you're in a dorm room where you're living in a bedroom and you don't have a whole house to yourself or a dedicated game space, you could just have a console plugged into it, a DVD player plugged into it, or a Roku or something like that. That way you can have your streaming services that's not relying on desktop and have a single place that you can switch between all those devices. If you're gonna be putting it on a VESA arm, like an articulating arm, you lose a lot of the functionality that you're sort of paying for here, which is like the camera mount, this really awesome stand with the integrated cable management. Now in terms of color accuracy, it looks great. The 98% DCI P3, I mean 100% sRGB and Adobe RGB, that's kind of like meh, whatever. It's the DCI P3 that really is the color standard that you're looking for in terms of accuracy. 98% of it, the colors punch. I can't test the accuracy of the colors because we don't have a scope that's gonna give us a readout of the actual, the colors and the way they're being displayed. But I think it's a great panel for somebody looking at building a streaming setup and have it all sort of just tie in. But it's really gonna come down to whether or not you can fit the 32-inch panel and you've got $800 burning a hole in your pocket and you wanna build a live stream setup. There's a lot of factors there. Is it a panel that I would use? Yeah, I would. In fact, I've got a VESA mount at home right now, and my favorite 16:9 panel is currently the ViewSonic Elite, but it's possible this may make its way home to my home and take that panel spot because I have it on the left side of my ultra wide that I use to monitor all my stream stuff, and you guys can check out my stream at twitch.tv/J2Cents. And I use this to do all my moderation stuff and see chat and notifications and all that sort. And in terms of the vertical height, the 32 inches makes this about the same height in terms of vertical measurement as my ultra wide, which is a 38-inch. That way I don't have one panel that's skinnier than the other one, so this might actually fit there nicely. So that's where you guys sound off. In monitor tech, what do you care about most? Do you care about the fancy features on this? Or is it just all about the hertz rating, the response time, and the size and the resolution? What do you care about when you buy a monitor? Sound off down in the comments below. I guarantee you these companies watch the comments to see what people are saying. It's expensive, but it's Corsair, it's premium. I love the fact that it ties into their ecosystem. A little disappointed by the Nexus and what it can and can't control and how laggy it is. That's something I hope will improve with time and the maturity of the software. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Sound off in the comments below, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.